Hey everyone. So today we're going to dive into something pretty huge in the biblical narrative. We're talking about the incredible shift from a law written on stone tablets to one written directly on the human heart. Let's get right into it.
So, let's start with a bit of a puzzle. Why would God create this perfect divine contract that, in a way, was actually designed to show everyone a really deep problem? I mean, what's the point of a system that can't actually fix the very issue it's so good at pointing out?
To get our heads around that, we first have to understand the intentional limits of the Old Covenant. It had a very specific job to do, but there is also a job it absolutely could not do.
Think of the Old Covenant like a perfect mirror. It was brilliant at showing you your flaws. It reflected God's holy standard perfectly, so you knew exactly where you fell short. But a mirror can't fix what it reflects, right? And here's the really crucial part. It had no real path back for someone who chose to consciously rebel against God.
I mean, just look at King David, his affair, the murder. These weren't accidents. They were deliberate choices, what the Bible calls high-handed sins. And under the system of animal sacrifices, there was nothing for that. No ritual could cover that kind of betrayal. From a ritual standpoint, he was totally cut off, no way back in.
And this is why his prayer in Psalm 51 is so desperate. He's not asking for another sacrifice. He knows that won't work. He's begging for a supernatural intervention, basically a complete heart transplant. He's crying out for the very solution that the covenant he lived under just couldn't provide.
And this brings us to the absolute core of the issue. The problem was never with the law. The law was perfect. The problem was with the human heart it was given to.
The prophet Jeremiah doesn't pull any punches. He describes the human heart as deceitfully sick. Think about that for a second. It's not just flawed, it's actively working against its own good, sabotaging any real attempt at obedience from the inside out.
So you have this fundamental unwinnable conflict. On the outside, you've got this perfect external law on stone tablets demanding obedience. But on the inside, you've got this internal reality, a heart driven by its own rebellious desires that is constantly undermining the whole project. It was an impossible tension. You just can't fix an internal problem with an external solution.
But this tension wasn't a dead end. Not at all. It was actually the stage being set for God's most radical intervention, the promise of something entirely new.
And it's Jeremiah, again, who delivers the solution. And this is a total game changer. God's answer isn't a new set of rules, it's a new location for them. He's going to take the law off the stone tablets and write it directly onto the human heart.
So what does that actually mean? It means your desires start to line up with God's desires. Obedience stops being a reluctant "I have to" driven by fear of punishment, and it starts becoming a willing "I get to" that flows naturally from a changed heart. Now, it's so important to get this. This wasn't just a minor patch or a software update. The source material calls it a divine re-engineering, a complete teardown and rebuild of the entire operating system that governs how God and people relate to each other.
Okay, so a divine re-engineering sounds pretty epic, but how does it actually work? What are the nuts and bolts behind this incredible new promise? Well, it's really a three-step process. First, Christ's death pays for all sin, including the deliberate, high-handed kind, and that act launches the new covenant. Second, his resurrection breaks the power of sin and death for good. And third, the Holy Spirit makes that victory personal by performing the heart surgery that turns a heart of stone into a heart of flesh.
The theological term for this whole mechanism is union with Christ. And what that basically means is that through faith, you are spiritually connected to everything Christ did. You participate in his death, meaning your old rebellious nature is considered gone, and you participate in his resurrection, rising to a brand new kind of life. This is how the big promise becomes your personal reality.
So, what does all this look like on the ground, in day-to-day life? Well, the difference is massive. It's night and day.
Let's just take a really practical example, like workplace envy. The old fear-based mindset is all about managing your behavior. I must not envy or I'll get punished. But the new reality is about heart transformation. It becomes a prayer. Lord, show me my heart. Help me genuinely want to celebrate with my colleague. The entire motivation shifts from fear to love.
And this shift just ripples through every single area of life. Motivation moves from fear to love. Prayer becomes an intimate conversation instead of just a formal ritual. Forgiveness goes from being limited to being total and definitive. And maybe the biggest one of all, your identity is no longer based on your performance. It's secured entirely by God's grace.
And this might just be the most liberating part of the whole promise. It's not just forgiveness, it's a divine decision to forget. The very sins that once would have completely cut a person off from God are now wiped from the record.
So to use one last analogy, this change wasn't a simple renovation. It wasn't just slapping a new coat of paint on a flawed building. It was a complete demolition of the old structure and a total reconstruction on a brand new, unshakable foundation called grace.
Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. If our relationship with God, our sense of belonging, is no longer tied to how well we perform, then what is it based on? The New Covenant's answer is that it's based entirely on His performance, His faithfulness, and His incredible grace.